Okay, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about some of the animation principles. The first ones I'm going to talk about is pose to pose versus key. So pose to pose, or straight ahead animation I should say, they're both keyframe animation. Straight ahead animation is essentially, I'll set a key here on my first ball and say I want it to sort of be this far on 4. I'll set a key there, 8. I'll move them up there. Now the way that it's auto keying is I have my little key on here. 12, I'll move them up here. 16 here. And then on 24 I'll have them shoot over here. So I get a little bit of an animation that kind of looks like this. When I hit play, that's my straight ahead animation. Now that's straight ahead. So all I'm doing essentially is I'm going forward and I'm setting keys as I go along my timeline. Now pose to pose, what I'll do is I'll actually set a key here and then I'll set my next pose, which is here. So they sort of arrive at the same time. But what I'm going to do is I want to select this guy, and just so I can kind of see. So he's about there on 4. So with keyframe is I set my first pose and my last pose, and I kind of look for my keys in extreme. So here's my key on 4. I'm going to set it here. So I'm just sort of keying my in-between sort of animations. And I set one on 8 there, so I'm going to bring him back. I'm just going to try to keep these guys in line. So my next one is at 12. I'm going to bring him up here. Next one is 16. Kind of give him a little shake. And yeah, there's 24. So they're essentially at the same speed. So what I did with this one, again, is for pose to pose, I set my first pose and my last pose, and then I looked in between, and I sort of set my in-between keys where I wanted them to be. Now, the next principle of animation I sort of want to talk about is timing and spacing. Now, timing is pretty easy. There's 24 frames here, and in film that equals 1 second. Okay, so essentially both of these balls are moving at 24 frames or at 1 second. So it's taking 1 second to traverse my grid. Now spacing has to do with the distance between my in-between keys to my initial pose keys, like my keyframes. So I'm going to select my in-between here. Now say I want this ball to get here quicker than this ball. Well, all I have to do is select this key and move it here. Now in order to do that in Maya, I shift, highlight this, and I middle mouse drag the key over. So say on frame 3 I want it to, and you can see it gets there a little bit quicker. I want this ball to get there a little bit quicker. Essentially you can see there again, the difference is it's a little bit quicker because this key was moved here. Okay, and so they'll still sort of arrive at the same time, it's just it's kind of sped up a little bit there. So that's sort of the spacing. Now if I want this ball to sort of arrive here a lot later, I can actually select this key here and sort of a middle mouse dragging again, move it a little bit closer. But notice the distance between these two keys. So it's taking it a lot longer to sort of reach this point here, but it accelerates on 8 because these two keys are closer together. So you want to be conscious of those sort of things. Like, so the closer the two keys, depending on where you set them, the faster or slower your ball will move. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, let's go ahead and move this back to 4. So again, it's sort of arriving. They're sort of arriving at almost the same pace, but say I decided to key him just about here on 4. So again, it's the spacing of your keys and where you decided to place them. So that's what spacing is. And again, timing is 24 frames in a second. So let's talk a little bit about easing in and easing out. So when a person moves or a ball is rolled, the ball will sort of ease in, accelerate a little bit, and before it stops, it'll ease out or it'll slow down. So if I go ahead and I drag out all my middle keys here, and I right click and hit delete, I'm going to sort of clean that up a little bit. So I'm going to say on 12 I want my ball to be about here. But what I'm going to do on 2 is I'm going to sort of slow my ball down. So on 1 he's here, 2 seems okay. And about 4, I'm going to bring him back just a little bit. So you can see he's slowly building up pace. He speeds up a little bit in the middle. And what I'm going to do is kind of slow him down before he hits 24. So maybe on frame 20, I'll kind of pull him back just a little bit. And 22, I'll ease him out a little bit. So now when I press play, you can see he sort of eases in, accelerates, and then eases out or slows down. And we can make that a little bit more dramatic. Maybe we'll go to frame 23 and kind of move him back a little bit. So I've got a lot more keys here. And maybe on 2, see 1 he's here, 2 doesn't have much of a movement. Kind of accelerates here. Let's kind of move this closer to 13 so it feels a little bit more like it's in the middle. Alright, so it's going to slow in, speed up, and then slow out again. So you can see that's sort of a little bit nicer pace. Now the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is anticipation. So with anticipation, we're going to sort of give our ball or our action a little bit more of a character by showing our audience that our ball is sort of anticipating the move. So you can imagine this as a run. So what our ball would do is, like, if it starts at 1 here, maybe on 4 it sort of rocks back a little bit. So you can see at 1 it starts here, the same place as the ball, and we're going to sort of anticipate our move. Now I'm going to kind of hold this for a frame or two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my middle wheel in and scroll over to 6. So what is the difference between that or just left clicking and moving? Well, if I left click with my mouse button and sort of move across my timeline, if I go to 6 here, you can see I'm moving. But if I want to copy this key, I can just go to 4, click my middle wheel in, and pan over to 6 and set a key. So you can see now I'm sort of holding for a few frames, I'm sort of anticipating the movement, and then my ball will kind of ease in and take off. So let's go ahead and play that. You can see my ball sort of anticipated that move, held for a second, and took off. So that's sort of the point behind anticipation. And that leads me into my next point, which is overshooting. So if our ball is sort of, again, easing in and sort of easing out, it's not going to stop on a dime like a robot. People don't do that, and actually I don't think that robots would either, because they're designed by people. So what they would do, though, is they'd sort of overshoot their mark and maybe return to it. So what I'm going to do is on 24, I'm going to middle mouse back to 22, and I'm just going to set a key here. So I'm going to make sure that my ball arrives at 22 much sooner, and I'm going to have it overshoot its mark. Let's go ahead and delete this frame 23 for a second. I'm going to have it overshoot its mark on 24. Or actually, let's have it overshoot its mark on 23. So here's frame 23. I'm going to have that overshoot its mark. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and have it arrive a little bit sooner. So again, the way I'm moving my keys is I'm just middle mouse dragging on this here. I'm going to right click and snap it so it snaps to the keys. So let's do that one more time. So anticipation, we're moving, accelerates, kind of overshoots on 23. So I'm going to move this, I'm going to have it overshoot a little bit sooner. So it overshoots on 21, and then on 24 it sort of rolls back to its the position it wants to be at. So let's take a look at everything together. We have our ball kind of moving, it builds up some anticipation, it moves quickly across our surface, and it overshoots its mark and rolls back. So let's play that. Alright. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is appealing or feeling. We're going to try to give this ball a little bit of character. So maybe on frame 2, as it begins to build up its anticipation, so I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit more space by dragging 6 over. Let's move it to sort of 8 here. So now we've got a lot of anticipation here. He's holding for a lot. But what I can do is on 4, I can give him a little shake. On 5, I'll shake him this way. So we're really giving some feeling into our character. Here's 7. So what we get is our ball is anticipating its move, it sort of gives itself a shake, and it takes off and overshoots its mark. So it's a much more active ball than this guy. Alright, so there's our next principle, which is feeling, or giving our ball a little bit of personality.